Hello everyone, here's Chen and Ad. So today the question will be, why do we try so hard to control everything? Hmm.
Hmm. Hmm. I remember being a child playing in the beach with my father and my mother and my brother and making a castle with the sand. And sure enough, like the waves start coming in and they're coming closer and closer, and try to build this wall to protect the castle from the coming waves. But of course, eventually the water comes and it takes this wall, and doesn't matter how hard try to fight, make a bigger wall or make a hole or whatever. Eventually, the water would come and swallow the castle. And I think there's a big lesson around control there, right? So, so many times we're trying to control something because we care about things like beauty. We want something to be look a certain way, to be a certain way. Like how beautiful to have a castle made of sand on the beach. It's very beautiful. We get attached also to the things that we make. So it's not only that it's a beautiful sandcastle, it's I made that sandcastle. So we get attached to our creations, we get attached to our ideas, we get attached to the outcomes of our actions. And so we try to control the situations around us to have a certain result to manifest. Mm. We also try to control sometimes because we're afraid, right? So I'm afraid of what might happen. So I try to control the people around me. It's like, oh, I'm afraid of what might happen if somebody is rude to me. So I'll ask everyone around me, hey, please don't be rude to me. But of course, eventually we go out somewhere and somebody's rude to us, and we recognize slowly over time through these experiences that yes, we can try to control all that we want, but in reality, we have no control. Right? This is an illusion. So we can try to engineer the space around us. We can do our best to have certain things manifest in the world, but ultimately, whether or not the things manifested, our life unfolds in the way that we want it to, is really largely not in our control. Right? We do our best, and then something happens. And sometimes what happens is what we want to happen, and many times what happens is completely unexpected. And for some of us, sometimes what happens is usually much more beautiful than the things that we had imagined to begin with. And for others, maybe it's not quite like that. And even this concept of what happens is more beautiful than what I had imagined or not, this is a matter of perspective, even, right? So usually the lack of attachment to this control allows us to see what is happening as perhaps being more beautiful than what I would have expected or done on my own. So I can learn to see the beauty in the angry driver who curses at me, and then if that ends up touching and moving something inside of me, then I can begin to see, ah, yes, it's I wouldn't have chosen. I've tried to control my environment so that nobody's rude to me, but somebody being rude to me actually has some benefit or some impact that I didn't see. And also, of course, with the things that we do, so many times we're working on a project or creating art or creating a business or working on a relationship or whatever it is that we're creating or working on, we're attached to it looking a certain way, to it coming out a certain way, to having a certain outcome. And so we try our best to control in these situations. But as soon as we realize really that we can only thing that we can do is what we can do, and the rest is not in our hands, then the easier it becomes to detach from the outcome and say, okay, I just do my best, and actually the outcome is my best. And then I can exist in a state that is kind of beyond this controlling. I can just be putting myself out into the universe as in the best way that I can think of and see myself. And then, and also I just, if something bounces back from the universe and it's what I expect, then wow, fantastic. But if it's not what I expect, then it's okay. I'm not doing it for that thing to come and bounce back in a certain way. I'm not doing it to receive in some particular way. The doing is the receiving in itself, which is the essence of karma yoga, this path of yoga, which is a very, very profound path. Perhaps we can have a deeper talk on this at some point. But there's a lot there. There's a lot there, and I think I have found that the more that I'm able to be flexible with whatever is coming in my life, and the less rigid that I am, actually, the more I enjoy. What other people would consider fantastic, I can celebrate it. And also what other people would consider tragic, I also can celebrate it. I remember a few years ago, I I was detained in an immigration prison because I was robbed of my passport and then um, was detained by police as an illegal immigrant. And I was in this place with no human rights for something like 10 days. And while I was in there, I was actually receiving so much. I was receiving so much, so many teachings around how to live my life, so many beautiful reflections. I was in silence and I was fasting and yeah, really connecting to a lot of truth. And it was a very, very beautiful time. And when I got out of this, of course, all of my friends and family were so worried about me, right? Wow, this is like probably the worst thing that could have happened to you. And so, yes, it's like this, right? Like, of course, I wasn't expecting it to happen. Of course, if I had had a choice, I wouldn't have chosen that to happen. However, it happened, and it was one of the most beautiful things that ever happened. So it's interesting, right? How perspective can shift if we if we have this flexibility. And again, I'm reminded of this story of, or just this visual, perhaps, of like the big Wanakasu tree here by the river, or we can use an oak tree. Doesn't matter if you don't know the Wanakasu. Yeah, there's one of these big trees, the oak tree, the Wanakasu tree, was growing next to a bamboo or grove, similar to how it is here. And one day, this big, big storm flew by, and the big tree, it was so rigid, it really resisted this big wind, this storm, and it snapped. And the bamboo, it just bent a bit with the wind. It swayed with it. It kind of danced in the wind. And after the storm, it was still there. And so, yes, we are often like this big tree, and we try to control. But perhaps there's a teaching there and that we can receive from the bamboo and how to flow and how to dance with what life gives us. And to perhaps relinquish our grip on this nature to control.
May I bend without breaking. May I trust the wind to carry what I no longer